Welcome to episode 54 of the Ontario Mortgage and Real Estate Insights podcast. I am your host, Steve Hamoan. Today, we've got a packed agenda with some significant updates and insights that are crucial for anyone involved in the Ontario real estate market. But first, let's dive into Ontario's new planning rules aimed at boosting home building. Ontario's Housing Minister, Paul Calandra, announced a new set of planning rules this past Tuesday. He stated that these rules are designed to set the stage for a long-term building boom. Calandra made the announcement at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference, telling the municipal leaders in attendance that these new rules would provide them with more tools and flexibility. It will ensure one consistent set of planning directions across the province, he said. It recognizes that municipalities understand local challenges and priorities when it comes to building homes, and that you know best where and what types of homes are needed to address the unprecedented growth we have seen in Ontario. Calandra's comments come at a time when Ontario's housing tracker shows the province is still far off the pace needed to meet the progressive Conservative government's pledge of building 1.5 million homes by 2031. Ontario has not yet met any of its annual targets toward this goal, although it came very close last year after it started counting long-term care beds. The province has assigned annual housing targets to 50 municipalities and promised extra funding to those who exceed or get close to these targets. Based on data up to the end of June, only 11 of these municipalities are more than halfway to their target, halfway through the year. Calandra pointed to external factors as significant obstacles hampering building efforts. The new planning statement ensures that even though housing starts have been impacted by global uncertainty and high interest rates, we are laying the groundwork for a long-term building boom as economic circumstances improve, he said. Another key point Calandra mentioned is that the updated statement streamlines the existing rules. The new planning document is 100 pages and 30,000 words shorter than its predecessor. This planning statement guides municipal planners on their community's growth, including what areas will be used for housing, industry, and farming. Key changes in the planning statement encourage the building of more homes near major transit stations and on underused low-density lands such as shopping plazas and malls. The province has been consulting for several months on this new planning statement. When the upcoming changes were first announced alongside a housing bill, the group Environmental Defense said the two moves would promote low-density sprawl. It is clear that these new planning rules aim to address some of the pressing issues facing Ontario's housing market. Whether these changes will be effective in meeting the ambitious goal of 1.5 million homes by 2031 remains to be seen. However, the focus on providing more tools and flexibility to municipalities could be a step in the right direction. The Bank of Canada's recent rate cut was expected to boost the housing market, but the country's largest real estate board said existing home and condominium sales activity remains mostly on hold as buyers wait for more reductions. The Greater Toronto Area saw 6,213 home sales in its systems in June, a 16.4% drop compared to 7,429 sales reported in June 2023, Tareb said. New listings rose to 17,964, a year-over-year increase of 12.3%. The average selling price of $1,162,167 was down by 1.6% from a year ago, according to Tareb. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, or TREB, said the central bank must repeat its June decision to cut its overnight lending rate. In fact, the board said that several reductions probably will be needed before sales volume rebounds. The Bank of Canada's rate cut last month provided some initial relief for homeowners and home buyers, said Jennifer Pierce, president of TREB, in a statement. However, the June sales results suggest that most home buyers will require multiple rate cuts before they move off the sidelines. Once home sales in Greater Toronto gain momentum, an ample number of homes on the market should ensure pricing does not jump, the board said. The GTA housing market is currently well supplied. Recent home buyers have benefited from substantial choice and therefore negotiating power on price, said Jason Mercer, chief market analyst with the board, in a commentary. Moving forward, as sales pick up alongside lower borrowing costs, elevated inventory levels will help mitigate against a quick run-up in selling prices. Calgary also saw a significant drop in home sales in June, as sales tumbled 12.8% from the same month in 2023, while new listings decreased by 3.6% and inventory rose by 9.2%, according to new numbers from the Calgary Real Estate Board. Condo sales in Calgary were down 8% for June, as properties priced under $300,000 were scarce. The board blamed a shortage of affordable homes across all residential property types. The pullback in sales reflects supply challenges in the lower price ranges, ultimately limiting sales activity, Anne-Marie Lurie, the organization's chief economist, said in a statement. Despite the decline, 40% of the homes sold went for over the asking price, and the unadjusted benchmark home price rose 9% over last June to $608,000, according to the board. The biggest increases were seen in the northeast and east sections of Calgary. The numbers come in the midst of a population surge in Alberta's biggest city. Calgary's 5.9% population growth between 2022 and 2023 was the highest of any of Canada's 6 metropolitan areas, with a population of over 1 million, according to recent Statistics Canada data. However, its 8.1% unemployment rate remains one of Canada's highest, although it is partly explained by the 73% labor participation rate, Canada's highest. In Canada's most expensive city for housing, the Greater Vancouver Realtors said the area has become a buyer's market, with inventory continuing to accumulate to levels not seen since the spring of 2019. The organization said this week June sales in the region were 2,418, a 19.1% decrease from the 2,988 sales recorded a year earlier. The sales numbers were 23.6% below the 10-year seasonal average. The June data continued a trend we have been watching, where buyers appear hesitant to transact in volumes we consider typical for this time of year, while sellers remain keen to bring their properties to market. Andrew Liss, Director of Economics and Data Analytics for the GVR, said in a commentary, "This dynamic is bringing inventory levels up to a healthy range not seen since before the pandemic. This trend is providing buyers more selection to choose from and driving all market segments toward balanced conditions." Like Toronto Realtors, Vancouver agents are hopeful the Bank of Canada cuts its interest rate again. The central bank is set to release its next announcement on July 24th. This is yet another factor tilting the market in favor of buyers, even if the boost to affordability is modest, said Liss about a potential rate cut. But June's lower-than-normal transaction volumes suggest many buyers remain hesitant, which has allowed inventory to accumulate and has kept a lid on upward price pressure across market segments. The group's composite benchmark price for all residential properties in Metro Vancouver is currently $1,207,100, a 0.5% increase from a year ago, and a 0.4% decrease compared to May 2024. Montreal, Canada's second-largest city, proved to be a bright spot in June, when the greater metropolitan area saw a 6.4% increase in residential sales in the greater metropolitan area over the same month last year, according to the Quebec Professional Association of Real Estate Brokers. Meanwhile, the Royal Bank of Canada issued a report Thursday that suggested housing has a long way to reach affordability, but is headed in the right direction, with rate cuts driving that movement. We think ownership costs have room to fall further in the period ahead. In June, the Bank of Canada initiated what we expect will amount to a full 2 percentage point cut in its policy rate to 3% by the end of 2025, which will bring down long-term rates as well, but to a lesser extent, the bank said in a commentary. New home prices in Canada were up by 0.2% last month, according to the latest data from Statistics Canada. The new housing price index for July showed that prices remained unchanged in 13 census metropolitan areas and fell in the remaining 4. The cities of Calgary, Edmonton, Kelowna, and Regina recorded a 0.8% increase in new home prices, the largest month-over-month increases in July, according to Statistics Canada. This was caused in part by rapidly growing populations, which fueled the increase in the demand for new housing. Based on the latest Statistics Canada census, Alberta had the largest quarterly population growth recorded among Canada's provinces at 1%. Meanwhile, British Columbia had the fourth largest spike in population growth at 0.4%. On the other hand, the largest monthly price declines in new home prices in July were recorded in Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo, where prices slipped by 0.5% and Ottawa by 0.2%. According to Statistics Canada, the nation's house pricing index increased by 0.1% year-over-year in July, marking the first annual jump in the index series since March 2023. New home prices were up in 12 of the 27 census metropolitan areas surveyed in July 2024. Based on statistics, the largest year-over-year increases in July were registered in Calgary at 5.2%, Trois-Rivières up by 3.1%, and Edmonton at 2%. On the other hand, Ottawa reported the largest year-over-year decline in July at negative 4.1%, followed by Kitchener-Cambridge-Waterloo at negative 2.7%, and Winnipeg at negative 1.4%. The new Housing Price Index measures changes over time in the selling prices of new residential homes, with the prices defined as those agreed between buyer and contractor at the time of contract signing. The survey included new single homes, semi-detached homes, and townhouses. An Ontario law came into effect last year, designed to add transparency to the home bidding process. Has it changed anything for buyers and sellers? If you have ever bought or sold a house, you may have experienced a bidding war. And how you felt about it likely depends on which side of the transaction you were on. A bidding war can increase the sale price of a property by encouraging buyers to start with their strongest offer and even spend more than they otherwise would. That is good news for sellers, but often frustrating for buyers, particularly for first-timers or those looking in competitive housing markets like Toronto and Vancouver. Late last year, changes to Ontario's real estate legislation, the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, came into effect, making open bidding legal in Ontario. Real estate is generally regulated at a provincial level, so as of now, these changes only apply to Ontario. It was big news at the time, but has it made a big impact? Here is what this legislation means for buyers and sellers in the province, and how it could influence the housing market. Open bidding in real estate is when the details of all registered offers on a property are shared openly between prospective buyers. This means that if 4 different offers are registered on a house, the 4 potential buyers can see the specifics of each competitor's offer, including the purchase price, deposit, closing date, and other terms. The name of each person making an offer is withheld, and if the purchase is contingent on the sale of another property, that information is also confidential. Unlike a closed bidding process, often referred to as blind bidding, open bidding allows each prospective buyer to know exactly how their offer compares to the competition. It also means that they can adjust their offer based on this information within a given time frame. Open bidding eliminates a lot of the guesswork in making an offer on a home, and it is intended to maximize transparency between buyers and sellers. In 2022, the federal government announced that it would be implementing a homebuyer's Bill of Rights. One of the goals of the bill was to make housing more affordable by putting an end to blind bidding, and it appears to have influenced the changes to the Trust in Real Estate Services Act. However, blind bidding has not been banned in Ontario or anywhere else in Canada at this time. Because this new legislation makes open bidding optional, not mandatory, blind bidding is still commonplace in Ontario. Doug Vukasovic, a realtor in Toronto, says, "Open bidding brings more visibility to the buying process." That said, he is not seeing open bidding being used broadly yet. He has only represented one buyer in an open bidding process, and so far, none of his listing clients have opted to use open bidding. It is not something people are gravitating towards. Based on what he is seeing in Toronto, Vukasovic does not think that open bidding will have an impact on real estate prices. Changes in the market will come from interest rates, he says, noting that after a slight cool down in some regions, the demand for houses should gradually increase as mortgage lending costs continue to ease. In other words, affordability is the bigger factor. We need lower interest rates for people to be comfortable placing an offer, he says. Once you share the details of your listing with prospective buyers, there is no going back, but you can change the bidding process from closed to open relatively easily. At any point during the bidding war process, a seller can change from closed to open bids, Vukasovic explains. They just need to give written consent to the agent and disclose the change to buyers. It rarely benefits a seller to start with open bidding, Vukasovic says, but it can be helpful once several bids have been registered on the property. For example, if the top 3 offers on a $1 million plus home are within $20,000 of each other, a seller can open up the bidding process to encourage each of those prospective buyers to put in their best and final offer. In this situation, the buyers benefit from greater price transparency, and the seller wins if one of the bidders decides to increase their offer. However, when the top 2 offers on a property are farther apart, say by $100,000 or more, it is unlikely that the seller would want prospective buyers to know that through open bidding, as the higher bidder might pull their offer to avoid overpaying for the property. This scenario is far less common than the one described above. Someone has got to stick their neck out a little, but paying hundreds of thousands over the next best offer is rare, Vukasovic says. Sellers can utilize open bidding strategically within a real estate transaction, which arguably gives them better use of this particular tool. But while it feels like a seller's world in many ways, buyers are also able to exert a certain level of control, Vukasovic says. You can include language in your offer that renders it null and void if the process is changed from closed to open bidding. That language just has to be written into the contract ahead of time. This means that your offer cannot be used as leverage against other bidders, but it also means your offer could be voided unexpectedly. Ask your realtor for advice that reflects your unique situation, as no 2 real estate transactions are exactly alike. Buying or selling a home can be stressful, but there are a number of tools at your disposal. A skilled, knowledgeable realtor with experience in your region should be able to provide guidance around open bidding and other strategies. So, has this legislation made a big impact on real estate in Ontario? Not at the moment. More than 6 months after this legislation took effect, it is still interest rates that are the largest factor weighing on Ontario's housing market. Will open bidding become mainstream in the future? Perhaps, Vukasovic says. But from a home pricing perspective, we are not seeing an impact yet. Now, let's turn our attention to Burlington, which has made significant strides in its home building rate. Burlington has climbed out of the bottom spot in the rankings that show the rate of home building in Ontario. The most recent provincial data indicates Burlington now sits at 16.47% of reaching its target of housing starts for 2024. So far, builders in Burlington have started 398 homes this year as it tries to reach its goal of 2,417. As the name implies, housing starts are those where construction has commenced. It is the guideline the Ontario government uses to track housing progress. Of the 50 municipalities in Ontario that are being tracked for housing starts, Burlington now sits in the 41st position. Since housing starts were first measured in 2022, Burlington has always been at or near the bottom of the rankings each month. In June, Burlington was at just 3% of reaching its goal. The new data released on August 13th shows that Pickering has the best rate, surpassing its housing start goal at 141%. Haldimand County now has the worst record at 4.29%. The building spurt in Burlington is being attributed to a few factors, including the warmer weather, which has encouraged builders to put more shovels into the ground. Other factors are recent favorable decisions by the Ontario Land Tribunal, or OLT, in support of developers, which has allowed projects to proceed. The OLT is the agency that rules on land disputes. Additionally, those at Burlington City Hall believe that new programs that fast-track building projects and ones that eliminate some of the red tape in the permit approval process have led to the burst of developer activity. Still, Burlington is far behind the 80% mark needed for housing starts that would allow the city to collect on millions of dollars in incentive grants that are being made available by the province. Burlington has long argued that the measuring tool used to track home building in Ontario, housing starts, is not fair because it only counts housing units that have been started and not those approved, under construction, or completed. These are circumstances that are beyond the control of the city. The approval process sits with the municipality. We don't build houses, we don't pour foundations, housing starts. That's on the development industry. Mayor Marianne Mead Ward has said in the past. Burlington has committed to adding 29,000 new homes by 2031, but has reached only 1,110 since 2022, according to the province's guidelines. That wraps up today's episode of the Ontario Mortgage and Real Estate Insights podcast. I hope you found these updates both informative and insightful. Join us next time as we continue to navigate the ever-changing landscape of Ontario's real estate market. Until then, I am your host, Steve Hamoan, signing off. Have a great day.